Hi, I'm Megan Bushhausen, and you're watching Notes from the Dev Video Edition.
Hey, fellow email geeks. I'm Megan Bushhausen, and I'm so excited to tell you about a new web series from Email on Acid. It's called Notes from the Dev Video Edition, and I'll be your host. Tune in as people from around the email community share their best tips and biggest email coding secrets. Subscribe to Email on Acid on YouTube to catch every episode.
And you've seen it there, folks. Let's get the live Megan Bushhausen in here. I love working on this show with her. So much fun. We have so much fun just getting to talk to people all over the world, talking about coding, all email development. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Let's get Megan in here, shall we? And then let's go ahead and get Anne as well. Hey, friend, what's going on?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Coming to us loud and clear. All right. And then we got Anne. What's going on, Anne? Let's get Shawnee in here.
Got Shawnee.
Here she comes. Here we go. All right. Here comes Shawnee. Perfect, y'all. Yeah. And like I said before, we were talking about Notes from the Dev. If you want to watch that series, there should be a link in the chat. Feel free to join that and watch it on YouTube and all that fun stuff. Y'all, how is it going? Shawnee, Anne, Megan, what is up?
Hi.
Good.
Good to see ya. Super excited about your panel.
Whole thing today. Useful
And
tips.
you guys, yeah, so many useful tips. We had so much coming down the line. So much. I think someone said earlier that they have so many tabs in their browser open right now from all the articles
That's
that we
awesome.
sent. So hey. At the end of the day, you know what? I want to hear on Twitter, someone tell us how many links, how many tabs do you have open today just from all the content that was shared. I would love to know. Seriously. So awesome, y'all. So we're going to get the segment going and started here in just a moment. Throw your questions in the question tab. Please throw them in the chat. But most importantly, throw them in the question tab so we can get those answered by our wonderful panelists.
Yeah.
Let me do one more thing. Let's make sure we got y'all's presentation up here. Good to go. Here we go here. All right, y'all. It should be a lot of fun. I will see you guys in just a moment. I'll let our wonderful panelists take over, and we'll wrap up after that. So, panelists, go ahead and take it away. See y'all down the road.
See ya. The nerds have gathered. Mwahahaha. We're gonna talk shop, and I am wicked excited, especially with Shawnee and Anne, who are both absolutely amazing, and I adore them. And they're my heroes.
You.
Oh, thanks.
So this is our panel for today. You already met me earlier. I'm Megan. We have Anne from Emails Y'all, and she does Email Loot, which is email geek gear. That's pretty awesome, so check that out. We also have Shawnee, who has worked on Shawnee's worked on some awesome big brands doing email design and development. And I am super excited to have her here also. So we have some questions prepared. Throw your questions in the question box though, because we're the last session of the day. So who knows, we might just go rogue and just start answering them stuff.
We could.
We could. So, our first question, which I feel like I kind of answered this in my session earlier, is like, how can designers make our lives easier? I'm going to throw this to Anne and Shawnee first before I kind of chime in.
Sure. I mean, I can go first. I kind of have to echo what Megan said about being brought in early in the design phase, because there's a lot of time that can be saved by me being able to tell you straight up, oh, hey, that can't be done in email, or this is going to take a really long time to do. So, I mean, being brought in early to be able to just, say those things straight out makes everything go faster.
Yeah. I second what Anne says. Definitely being brought in earlier. You can typically, I always say to any of the designers I work with, to say, like, use us as consultants, like very early on. If you have an idea, talk it through with us, because we can avoid any of those pitfalls when it comes to the dev time of just going like, hey, like you want to do this, but this might take long, or especially if there's a tight timeline for something, or if we have all the time in the world, then we can talk new ideas. But yeah, like especially one of the other things is like reusing components, like tweaking colors, changing fonts. Those are pretty simple things to approach with. Building a whole section or build a new section that we have to QA strenuously, those create frustration when you're like, it may not have needed this new thing. So
yeah, totally. I think what I would add to this is, you know, in the email industry in general, we talk about not being in silos from other departments. And I think it's very easy for us email developers to, even within our email teams, to get siloed because we just like get sent the stuff to work on. And if we're not talking to our fellow email people, if you're not an email person of one, which many of us are, some of us aren't, but if, you know, we communicate and talk to our designers and managers and whatnot, then we can all work together to make sure the best email goes out. Chad yesterday talked a lot about how when you work in email, you need to understand what's going on elsewhere, which I totally agree with. Like, I'm an email developer, but I can talk to you about light strategy work or deliverability because I feel like I need to understand that to know how my work affects those other things. So don't silo yourself, developers. Just because you get to do the nerdy techie stuff doesn't mean you can just piece out on the other conversations, because you need to be there to represent what's possible.
Yeah, I very much agree with that one. It's very, very important for you to be included in the whole process, even the outcomes. If you understand the outcomes, you know how to do better next time, but having those discussions. But even one of the things that I've learned over time is having, even though you're a dev, you can have a design thinking approach to solutioning. Really thinking about responses and the approach, because you have knowledge of being the dev side of it, knowing the data, knowing what's possible in platforms, as well as all the email clients that we have to like deliver to. It helps like kind of, oh, I know this will work really well here. Maybe we can make a variation over here, and bringing your thoughts to the table early on, I think, is removing that silo, because it makes that project even better. So
totally. What's the hardest layout y'all have worked with? For me, I've done some overlapping content, which ended up working out pretty well. I know the most frustrating and time consuming, I did it to myself, was the email camp email I sent out like a week or so ago with the labels, and got to kind of watch me go through that because I was like messaging her constantly. I was like, Anne, why am I doing interactive email? But it went out. That was really hard. It'll be better next time, and I can't wait to do more. But that was the hardest for me. What about you two?
Yeah, overlapping content is difficult. The ones that are so detailed that you've got like 14 different columns within 600 pixels or whatever, that's a little rough to for changing screen sizes.
I think for me, it's not so much overlapping content per se. It's like the level of dynamic content you're trying to like deliver an email. You're like, I'm trying to make it personalized for everyone. And you're like, oh, okay, that's a lot to build on, especially when you're also trying to make sure that you're talking about default experience for people who do not fit criteria. But then you have 15 other personalization aspects that you're trying to deliver on. And so that's it's a big hurdle when you're trying to think about the data, but then you're also trying to think about like, how do I build this? How does it look good in all these variations? What if somebody has an aspect of it and it's just like kind of a sad email? So that one is usually, that's a hard one typically.
Yeah. I have never dealt with that level of dynamic email, so I can't even imagine like what you have to go through for that. I'm sure you run into like so many edge cases and things that just no thanks.
It's like when it works, it's beautiful. When it breaks, it's just such a high frustration because you're like, well, wait, what happened? Especially if you don't own the data in the long run, like you're getting it served from another like, source. You're like, oh, nobody told me that you're going to change that upstream. That's fun.
Yeah.
So now I have to go and fix that. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go spend time doing that one. So.
Totally. All right. How about we talk about lean emails?
Ooh,
We know that we have to keep it under 102 kilobytes for Gmail. So how do we optimize for that?
Streamline your tables, honestly. Like, and up like the overlapping of 14 columns, but really I think that's part of the conjunction of working with your designer to mitigate that, so you're not having like table section where it's like table within table within table, because the more tables you have, the more it adds to your load, especially if you're dynamically filling in content. You want to be as lean as possible within tables. You have to be aware of the tables that your ESP is adding as well. So always acknowledge that, like, you're not going to be aware of all the tables that get, even the ones you build, you may not be aware of the ones that get added on at send time. So that's one of my big things. Table sections. Then
Table section.
Table section, yes. Like exception, but not address sadly. But also keep your CSS lean, reusable CSS styles, not being super hyper specific of like, this is only for this one piece of content. It should be reusable throughout your email. So being a little bit more, and then anything that needs specific styling, doing that inline as much as possible if it needs like adjustment, because then you're reusing classes over and over versus creating a long line of classes. So that's my thought.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. Also, I recently went through, all right, so first I would say, think about it from the beginning, from when you start coding your email, like trying to limit the amount of, code that is, possible to eliminate. So I went through recently a situation where I had to get this really long EDS to eventually get into, or to not clip in Gmail. So I had to go through every single line of inline styles and delete anything that was like, padding, padding top 0 or whatever. So, I mean, like, don't put in extra stuff unless you absolutely have to. There are some situations in which you need to specify 0 padding. I'm not saying there are, but they're like, if you don't need to add that extra bit of CSS, don't add it, because man, that could be the one thing that just flips you over the edge, and now your footer is not showing in Gmail.
Yeah, don't inline code that you don't absolutely have to.
Absolutely.
Which ESPs can bloat that up real fast. Automatic inliners can bloat it up real fast.
Absolutely.
So just be mindful of that for sure. All right.
Yeah.
Think we said all we've had to say there?
I think so.
Yeah. The max file size for Gmail is 102 kilobytes.
Yep. That doesn't include images. That's just your code.
That's just
your images. You don't have to keep your images under that. Although you still should keep your images as small as possible. But it doesn't count in that code weight. Don't load up a 20 megabyte image.
No.
Or GIF.
No.
Don't do it.
No. I think my last note is just being aware of what your ESP does, because moving to one, I think the one thing I've learned going through many migrations in my career has been do a lot of test sends and see what the raw code is, because if you don't know what's being sent, you don't know what you have to overwrite or overrule is a better term, or what things are going to make your life even worse in the long run. It's worse when you're trying to solve a problem and you're not aware of what your ESP is doing. So.
Yeah. And I'm looking at Seo's posting a bunch of stuff.
Yes, I know
some special characters can also cause clipping in Gmail. So if your code's underneath the threshold and it's still clipping, then just check out some of your special characters, something there may be going on.
Yeah.
All right. What we got next? So how do we handle live text and different layouts and languages and whatnot and all that? I know e-commerce especially gets very image heavy when a lot of it could be just coded and be fine. So how do we handle all that? Sorry, e-commerce folks.
Well, everybody probably already knows how I feel about live text. Live text is absolutely necessary. Please do not put text in an image if you don't have to, if it's not like an absolute edge case. Because and the reason that we do that is not only because it's more legible for everybody, but also for accessibility issues. You know, people who use screen readers need live text in order to read out that content to the person consuming the email. And so live text is really the best way to go if you can. Regarding different languages, I am currently doing an email for Cameo that has a bunch of different, I think there are 5 different languages that I have to support. So there's lots of handlebars, if-else statements for that. And I find that to be a lot easier to handle as opposed to making like one English email and then below that one French email. It lessens the code. It's not as heavy, and you can with the handlebars code and everything, you can see that being put in while you're coding, so you can see if the Japanese characters maybe take up 3 lines where English only takes up 2 or something to that effect. Like there are different languages can get different sizes of words, and that can be very that can be a problem if you don't be aware of that and do something to counteract it.
Try going English to German. Wow. The words get very long.
It gets very
long.
I very agree, and I think it's a start design. Because if the design doesn't allow for other languages and it's not a flexible enough design, you're just fighting this losing battle of trying to make languages that are that you started with the design in English and fluent, and you're like, well, you'll just make it work, and you're like, well, no, if it's a tight space, I can't make that work. Like certain, like German, even like a lot of languages can run long and words can't break, and so you're essentially break container. So if you're not having those discussions up front to figure out what languages are being applied, I think I'm always a believer in giving a lot of negative space around chunks of live text, because it also is better to read in the long run, but also you have more flexibility if you're not trying to like put images near it or put something right below it. Giving some space and breathing room allows a little bit more flexibility if you're thinking about multiple languages in the long run.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And we like white space to begin with. So
yes, very much so.
It's good for designs.
Yeah, good for your design to breathe a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good for your eyes to let everything breathe a little bit, for sure. All right. Oh, and let's talk some accessibility on templating systems.
Yes, very much. I think for accessible templating system, definitely leverage design system suite, because when you're not rebuilding things over and over and you're already injecting accessibility components into your builds without having to think about it over and over again. Like using P tags, H tags, those are always really good, especially for screen readers. I always forget the naming of that, but Anne will say it, somebody will say it. But making sure you're coding things, like the other thing we just talked about, do not put text in an image. That's not accessible for everybody. And if you have to, make sure you're alt tagging the crap out of it, because it just, if somebody just is, oh, something it's in the image, but like you've got a population that can't see it or has a hard time seeing it, they probably are using, software or devices to read that. So being really thought of. Also, main table build, because it doesn't have to jump through, and you also don't have to do the skip over for all the tables. So those are my thoughts on it.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, in an email design system like on mine, if you caught the talk this morning, when I went through those footers where you could see the language changing, and I had the lang attribute up on my component base, that's driven by JSON. So I put in my language code, and then it pops in that lang attribute up there. So like having that sort of system in place, where you can like quickly switch between,
I like Switchly, folks.
Switchly, you can Switchly go between the languages and whatnot. Yeah, I think if you know accessibility and you're using good principles of accessibility for email, then your templating system will automatically be that way. Like that you should be thinking about from the ground up.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if you put it in your email design system once, you're always gonna have it. All of your images will have the necessary alt tags, just there, and you can do a search for empty alt tags. There are situations in which you need empty alt tags, but we're not talking about that right now. But you could do a search and see are any of my images don't have any alt text for that. And a checklist, I believe Email on Acid has a checklist that includes like alt text or something.
Yep, it'll check.
Exactly.
Yep, so Email on Acid, the campaign pre-check will make sure that you have alt text on your images and a whole host of other accessibility things. It'll check what it looks like for different types of color blindness. It'll check your links. It'll check your alt text, just a whole host of different things. If you're using Parcel, I know we have talked about Parcel. A lot of people talk about Parcel a lot, but on the free plan, there is also an accessibility checker. So that'll call out a whole bunch of things. I learned things that I was missing by using it, so I definitely highly recommend it.
Yeah. I think that's with any Email on Acid, Parcel, any QA or platform you're using for testing, any one of them that's worth their salt is going to have those accessibility checkers in place. If you're not getting something you're using right now, make sure you need to find something new, because just because you're like, you can't check everything. That's the thing. Like with just looking through your code code gets dense, you're going to miss things, and it just happens. So that we leverage testing platforms to be able to kind of cover things that you're going to miss. I use it all the time, especially when building new components for an email. Is definitely gets run through a testing platform and making sure that I cover everything. And also have a team with I've thankfully had the opportunity to work with, leveraging them to help you cover bases that maybe a testing platform may not cover. Have access to multiple versions of software and devices, and so they can tell you if oh, this is a bare minimum, you're meeting it, but here's where you're exceeding, or this is where there's a massive deficit in your accessibility. So that's one of my other things, or advocate for that, and especially if you're at a larger company, that should be advocated for, is to have accessibility partners or an accessibility service. I know there are companies out there that do that. So
absolutely. Yeah. If you're interested in more about email accessibility, not to promote something else I've done, but I did speak about email accessibility at Unspam back in January, and that talk is on YouTube. So if you just head onto there and search for really good emails, you can find it. And there's also a lot out there about email accessibility written by people in the community. Definitely an important thing to dive in on.
I think I gave a talk on it as well. But you can find that one on YouTube. Just go to emailsyall.com and go to the YouTube. You'll find it.
Yes.
So excellent, resources are out there.
Yes, they most definitely are. So those are all the questions we prepared. So I think we have a few minutes to answer any other questions that people might have. I saw some good ones come in. Let's take a look. Oh, I love this one from Andrew. We're gonna flow with that one first if we have time. Thomas, do we have time?
Oh yeah, we
Like
got
one.
time. You were
Okay, we got time.
busy answering. Yeah, both y'all, all y'all. That's why I was like, I'll let y'all ask whatever you want to ask at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, okay. There's this one from Andrew that I love. What are your thoughts on designers who code and coders who design? Would an employer desire such a person to perform both duties? So I have been that person.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
I mean, that's,
I cut you off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead.
developers need to understand design, and designers may not necessarily completely understand development, but I think it's great if you understand the general principles. At my position before Cinch Email, I was an email person of one, and I didn't actually know a lot about email development. I came from the design world and walked into a bunch of custom coded HTML templates that were specifically for MailChimp, and I knew HTML and CSS, and I had to kind of just dive in and learn it. And that's kind of how I got into email development. So I was designing, and it was mostly newsletter driven. So I was designing the newsletters in Adobe XD because that's what I had. And then I was translating it all into code. So yeah, I think it's great to have both skill sets. And I think especially at smaller organizations, it's very much needed for sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
very much.
Totally agree with that. There are some jobs out there where you need to be the one and only. So you need to know a lot about design and development. But I completely agree. People who, designers who code and coders who design are, I think you need at least some of that. So you can make recommendations to design people on like what is available or what you can do, what can't be done. And also designers who code, like they already know what's possible. So I mean, like once you get the Figma from them, you're like, oh, easy,
Yep.
Yeah, because they've already thought about that and all the different ways that you can code a specific structure.
Yeah, historically, career-wise, I've always been hybrid. So I'm typically doing both, whether it's been email, which has been a large chunk of my career, or a large amount of my web work was being both designer and developer. So I leverage partners and cohorts to kind of work through design, especially if I feel like I'm missing something or somebody's not happy with it. Leverage your network and people you love working with to kind of bounce ideas off of to keep developing those forward. But I think I've also mentored a number of people who've flexed between, they love the creative side of designing, but they love the technical aspect of coding. But you're also problem solving in both of those spaces. And that is such an awesome thing to have, to work with somebody who's in that mind space of I just want to solve the problem. I know what the issue is, and whether that is a technical solution or a design solution, knowing both sides of those spaces makes a solution better in the long run. So
absolutely.
Totally. And I'll give one more example to that and how it works. So I know I keep referencing the email camp emails we sent out, and that's mostly just because it was so outside of things we've done so far while I've been here. So those emails were not designed by one of our designers ahead of time. They did the illustrations. So when I got them and saw how they were designed, I was like, oh, I'm going to do some stuff with this. And because I have my design background, I knew how to take those illustrations and adapt it and grab the colors and whatnot to email to make it look really, really good. So we can absolutely support each other. And that's why it's so important. If you are a developer on a team that has a designer, that's why it's so important to forge a strong relationship with them, because then you can trust each other to start making these decisions. didn't really run the emails by our designers before like we sent them out. I was like, it'll be fine. They'll trust me with this. And like just knowing that the work is going to be good and you can trust each other with that, I think is like absolutely invaluable. Absolutely. Like I will wax poetic about our designers all day long. They're amazing, and just I love having that type of relationship because I've always been an only until I got here onto a team. So to have people to problem solve with and be creative with is just like amazing.
Yeah. As a freelancer, I have to say you see the gambit of designers who are just print designers and developers that are just developers. But having that relationship is just like Megan said, is really important, especially when you get to not working with the same people over and over. Like you have to forge brand new relationships, and having that basis of like design and development for both people on each side is invaluable.
Yeah, I think the other part of it is I always think of that building that relationship also creates in being an advocate for the designer or the developer, whatever seat you're sitting in. Because I mean, we've all been there. Like, not everybody gets invited to the meetings, and so whether you're the designer in the meeting or the developer in the meeting, you are also being the advocate for that project or whatever you're working on, and being the advocate of saying, hey, have you talked to the designer or the developer on this? You should be pulling them in. I think that's a large part of being in the email space, is being an advocate for others. And that it's not even design. It's also your content writers. It's also your analytical partners. It's all those things you should be advocating for. And I think everybody's like, it's just email. It's like, it's a complex like landscape for email. So you're needing to advocate for everybody to say, have we talked to people who need to pull the reports for this to know if this is successful? Have we talked to the copywriters to know if this is giving the right tone, the right vibe, or does it make sense? So I think it's a big part of your job, whatever seat you're sitting in. And if you're a team of one, you're needing to make sure you're advocating for yourself, but also for just the space, especially when you're like, I'm a person of one, so I can't do it all. But I want to advocate that my manager knows what's going on, and then the other team that I'm working with. So yeah, very much so.
Cool. Love it. That was such a great question.
It was.
Thomas, do we have time for more? Do we have to wrap it up?
You can do, I'll let you guys do 2 more. How about that?
Okay, cool. Yeah. Because there's a great one to segue. I love these questions. There's one that segues from Alexandra that I'm going to answer. And I think there are a bunch of other questions in here that when we start answering this one, we'll actually answer the other questions too. Because a lot of this is like, if you're a designer who doesn't code, how do you get started? And there are questions about resources and stuff. So how do we get started on learning how to code?
I like that. How do you get started?
This is a question we get all the time. Like even in Email Geeks, people are like, I'm just starting HTML. How do I learn how to code emails?
It's true. I mean, it is one of those like stumbling blocks. I think if you didn't start off in it, or you find a new space you love, but you also don't have all the knowledge points to be able. I think a couple of things I always suggest is there are a large amount of resources online, but if that feels too large and it's a non-starter, like you can't find somewhere to go first. My best thing, especially being in the email space, has been connecting with people in the space is one good starter place. I've forged some really great friendships with like Anne and a few other people in the larger Email Geek space, and everybody's so open to answering your questions, giving you resources, helping you troubleshoot. You're like, I'm moving to a new ASP. Have you worked in it? What are your thoughts on it? What are things I need to watch out for? It seems very simple, but it is like your best resource is going to be somebody who's kind of walked those steps as well, or has that knowledge already, because they can point you in the right direction, especially if you're trying to use a new tech stack like MJML. But also just the basic understanding of HTML and CSS. Like nobody enjoys really stumbling through that one, or any of the ESP platforms, especially proprietary language components of it. Like being able to DM somebody really quickly, or an Email Geek Slack channel, just like, hey, I hit this roadblock, I need help. So
Yeah,
Yep.
I can't remember who said it, but it said that we're all community taught. Like instead of thinking, self-taught, we're all community taught.
Yes.
Because
Very
because we're such an open group and ask questions of each other all the time. So I really like that term, community.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, I love it. So I completely agree with what you two say. Start learning, HTML and CSS. We have the Email Geeks Slack community. If you're not there, you should join. There's an email code channel that I have learned so much through. People there are just so giving. I've gotten on calls with Jay Oram and Mark Robbins. Remy Parmentier has helped me. Anne has helped me a bunch of times. I think I freaked out Anne when I first met her because it was at a conference. It was early in the morning. And I was like trying to be peppy. I was like, "Oh, Anne, you're the Anne Tomlin." And she was just like, "Oh my gosh, I guess who the heck?"
I have no memory of that whatsoever.
It was the morning, and Anne's not a morning person.
I believe it.
I remember.
Yeah, I believe that because I've seen Anne in our chats for every single email camp, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's the Anne Tomlin! Like she's gonna be here." I'll +1 on that.
So yeah, like if you get involved in this community, like you'll find all your friends. Like I joined Email Geeks, I was like, I found my people. Like these people get me. It's great.
I would say if you are really looking for like a teach me type of course type thing, thebetter.email, I believe.
I was about to mention that. Jason
Rodriguez is, I think it's thebetter.email.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, great. But yeah, that's an excellent resource. He's got not only written stuff, but videos as well.
Yeah, he has a bunch of books. Sayo popped the link in. I see. Yep, W3 Schools is a good. I use that reference for CSS literally like all the time because who can remember everything, and I forget really dumb stuff that I always have to look up. I always have to look up MSO conditionals because I can never remember them. So no.
So do I.
I still have written books because sometimes I like to keep myself focused. So I have like W3 School, there's books that are out there for basic CSS and also basic HTML, of just having those as something you can flip through. I have one for AmScript as well because I'm in Salesforce. So being able to have a quick reference guide that you can kind of go, do I remember the formatting for this? Is this the right thing I'm doing? Because I feel like I just broke something. Because usually that's how you feel in the ESP. You're like, I think I just broke something. So being able to like quick reference instead of like Googling, like searching for something is helpful for some nuanced things, but if it's specific to something that you're already working in, you usually have those resources kind of either pinned or Email Geek Slack channel. Always great.
Yes, absolutely. All right. I think we said everything we could say on this subject.
Yes.
Or we would go too long on the subject if we keep going and then we'll run over time. We don't want to do that to Thomas because he's been working very hard and I don't want to make his life harder.
It's all good. I'm just curious how many tabs people got open now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. We got time for one more.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to attempt to talk about the future of email development because Mark Robbins has asked us?
Oh man!
Even though this is something he should be speaking on. Sorry, Mark.
Wow, that's real rough.
We're gonna do it. Do it.
Do it.
Please.
Well, I mean,
this one.
Yeah. Considering the past couple of years of progress.
Oh, and we lost you.
And we lost you.
Sorry.
There you go. Now we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. So, thinking about the, the past couple or the past 5 years or so, it's progress is a little slow. We don't have email
standards. And that always is, an issue. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why we don't see large jumps in email development availability, because you have to say, okay, one person might be, one email client might be doing something awesome, but there's we have to wait until, or we have to think around, another, I mean, I would basically just say, like, it's slow, but I see it improving, and I hope that the email markup consortium,
Yep.
right?
Plug.
Yep. Emailmarkup.org, check it out.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I really hope that does a good job of putting getting at least some standards in place. I think that would help the not only the community, email in general. Yeah, just all in all, I think that's where I personally see the future of email going. So
yeah. Jumping off of Anne's thoughts on it, I do think it's going to be a quorum with the designer and developers of the space more so than the platforms, because there's so many levels to platforms. You've got large ones like, the Microsoft of the world and the Googles of the world, and they're not going to come to a quorum on how they consume email code or how they develop or display it. So that it has to come to us essentially to kind of create that kind of quorum of, hey, this is how we all feel like this is how things should be approached. This is how we need to move forward and develop. Because I think we all talk to each other. We're not such a large landscape of professional people that we can't have those like, hey, I agree to that. That makes sense. That's how I was coding stuff. I think that's kind of the future of email, is more of a community-based set of standards versus coming from platforms or browsers, because we're dealing with multiple spaces that we're sending email to. That's just, I don't think that's going to happen in a long time. We can also, as a large group, start demanding, I think, or start asking those questions of those platforms to make email better in those spaces, because I think it's one thing if singular companies are asking or singular people are asking, but if you're as a large community of professionals saying, hey, this sucks, we're always going to say this sucks. And I know they're like, Google's probably like, they don't care. It's like, people care. The passion behind email, both on the side of the people who work in it, but also the people who receive it, is massive, a big thing. Like, I mean, we all know, like, you'll get that quick response from when you send an email comes out of wherever you're working and somebody hates it or there's something wrong with it. You'll hear it so quick, like ridiculously quick. So I think it's more coming from a community setup than it is a official, like, company delivered one.
Totally. Yeah. And email markup is definitely trying to pave the way there. Talk to ISPs, ESPs. How can we make email more standard, accessible, better for coding, better for users, yada, yada, yada. I think another futuristic, future of email dev, I think, it's going to be those email design systems and using components over the raw code, because we're just going to keep on being asked to do more. Email's a massive channel for companies, and we're going to be asked to do more and more and more. And those email design systems is really what's going to allow us to create more email efficiently, less time, fewer errors, yada, yada, yada. What we were talking about earlier today. I really think every developer absolutely needs to invest in an email design system, 100%.
Yeah. And I mean, especially if you're a team of one, it helps you in the long run of having a design system at hand. But also, I think the other future component is understanding where everybody's at, because I think sometimes there's that daunting thing when you go to like talks at conferences and stuff, and you're like, well, I'm not there. And just reiterating, like, you're making decisions for like for the company you're in and the team you're on, not per se trying to be on those large scale, like it's very rare, honestly, but those large swathing teams where there's a whole bunch of email developers and designers in play to be able to do all the unique things. Most of the time, our teams are very small and nimble. So just reiterating, like, you're gonna use the tools you have, and you're gonna also make decisions based on the team you have. Because I think one thing I realized early on going into email was that, I met people who had like 3 or 4 other developers on their team. They could do all these awesome things, and then you're like, I'm just one person. I'm doing it all, and they're like, you can do it. And you're like, no, I can't. I do like to sleep, so I'm going to make decisions based on that, and also be realistic. So, like Megan and all of us have said, using a design system will help you in the long run because you can also do that. But find the balance in that, because sometimes you want to do those little bits of joy. Because recently we've heard like feedback where I work is that sometimes they start to look the same all the time, and people want a little bit of delight at times. So find the right time to like inject those like unique pieces as you can. So yeah.
Also, there are resources out there that can help you build an EDS. It looks like a huge project when you're just looking at it, but there are tools like Taxi for Email out there that already have the framework for you to start making those. And I know that that's not the only one, but yeah, there are definitely those things available.
Love it.
All
Love
right.
it. Love it. Sounds good, y'all. Awesome. Well, we gotta let y'all go. We can hang out here all day, but I know y'all
I gotta
work.
go. My daughter's got an appointment. I gotta go.
Yeah. I have to leave today on a road trip, actually, as soon as we probably get off here in a little while. But y'all, Megan, Shawnee, Ann, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking out time of your day to be here with us. All the hard work y'all have done to put this panel together and all this fun stuff. So I know we had a lot and a ton of takeaways and a ton of tabs opened this afternoon. So I just want to thank y'all for stopping by and being here with us. So I appreciate you.
Had a great time.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. All right, y'all. Let's say goodbye to our last panelist as we get ready to wrap up. Thank y'all for being here and hope to see y'all soon. All right. Take care, y'all.